What's the typical suggestion if it is a gut-related problem?
Well, the first thing to do is to get the best food you can down there, which is mostly plant-based. There are exceptions to that. But if we're looking at restoring your good health down here, the gut does seem to like plants at this point. So we talk about, having a wide range of plants. The current advice from one or two people is that you would aim to have 30 different types of plant per week, just to get the diversity, because we don't know which one you need. So why don't you give as much difference as you can? And, people think you can't afford to eat healthily. All I would suggest is that you go and travel to somewhere like India or anywhere in Asia where they eat pretty much a lot of plants, mostly plants, for pennies. You can make a healthy meal if you know how to cook, by just mixing some of these the dals and the root vegetables and the other vegetables easily mixed together. A few spices in there, absolutely delicious, and your gut and your microbiome will be jumping with glee.
You talk about eating your rainbow.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means as many colours as you can fit in, literally, because each colour is produced by a constituent of plants. Many of them we call polyphenols, which we know have a range of effects on all sorts of mainly on the microbiome again, because they're all in different ways prebiotic. They all help good guys prosper down there. But then after the microbiome has processed them, which is interesting, the microbiome is critical for processing polyphenols. They don't get absorbed unless the microbiome breaks them up already. So the benefits of the colours depend on the good guys down here. When they get into the blood, they start doing all sorts of wonderful things to the lining of the blood vessels, for example, up into the brain, where we got what we call a blood-brain barrier, which is actually a very exciting interface. The polyphenols, the colours, all have well-established mechanisms that improve the health all around the body. So simple. If you've got a child who used to say, eat your greens, we now say, eat your rainbow. The more different colours, the better.
I wonder if that's why they put so many artificial dyes in junk food.
Well, I wish they wouldn't.
To try and trick our brains into thinking it's, I don't know.
No, there's nothing quite like the original.
In terms of fruit,
yeah.
What are your favourite fruits to sort of recommend people to eat, and why?
Probably if you wanted to have a top list, the darker the colour, the better. So we talk about purples, and I'm pleased to see that your team has found a purple carrot there. And we remind ourselves that most vegetables were purple once upon a time. If you think of maize, in the sweet corn and the maize that you grow in the Americas, that mostly was originally purple. And we bred the purple out because it didn't look so appetizing. And we're probably purple deficient. I think we could do with more purple in our lives, because the purple and blue color is something called anthocyanins. These are types of polyphenol, and they're particularly powerful, particularly with the blood supply. And we're talking about things like eyesight and brain health and circulatory health, blood pressure control, and all those sort of things can be improved just by having more purple in our lives. So we've got beetroot, that'll do. We've got the berries. Red grapes are probably more. We've got the red grapes here. That's got more of these than the yellow that the grapes do. So I would start with the reds and purples.
You said you think we're purple deficient.
Yeah. Just think of something interesting to say, but it's probably something in that.
And in terms of vegetables, what are your favourite go-to vegetables that you'd recommend I eat?
Start with the roots. The root vegetables, the carrots, the beetroots, the parsnips, the various other root vegetables out there, not all of which are people's favourites, but they have fibre, sort of starch in them, which is particularly prebiotic. and some of the most powerful prebiotics are the root vegetables. So those are definitely worth having. The greens, obviously, and broccoli. And interestingly, I found a purple one, which is easily enough to get. So, you can get the purple or the green. Obviously there's a value in the purple there. But any broccoli, any of the cabbage family is full of all sorts of other ingredients that have their own benefits in all sorts of ways: metabolism, gut, hormonal, blood supply. So greens, roots, and the big one in most people's lives are the grains, wheat, for example, but cereals, lentils, dal, peas and beans, all of these have their own benefits, particularly for the microbiome. Again, I don't know exactly what even I need, let alone what anyone else needs. So the best thing to do is to have as much diversity as possible.
What is your diet?
It's a mix.
Vegan? Do you eat meat?
Yeah, I just have a broad range of what most humans have eaten, which is a mixture of things. I do, obviously, many of my patients are vegans, and you can live quite well with them. You have to add a few extra things just to cover your back on a few areas, but you can live perfectly well, at least when you're a grown-up, an adult, on a plant-only diet. But, who am I to say that an Inuit in the Arctic who never sees any vegetable ever and only lives on, traditionally, only lives on seal and whale meat and blubber, is any less healthy than someone in Thailand who lives only on rice and vegetables? We can cope with all sorts of variety of foods. There isn't one food for everybody.
I think we were discussing before we started recording that I'm currently on a ketosis diet, the keto diet.
Keto diet, yes.
Which basically means that I'm extremely low carb in my diet.
Yes.
Basically consuming no sugar.
Yes.
What do you think of the keto diet? What's been your experience with it?
It can be, and I think you're one of those that would get a lot of benefit from it. And because sugars are, they're in a lot of vegetable material. And of course, unfortunately, we have sugar now as an added to our diets. They tend to slow down various parts of your metabolism. They tend to make metabolism a bit more like hard work. And so if you take those out and some of the more sugar-producing carbs, then you're freeing up a lot of energy. So a lot of people on keto diets find that, they're sharper. That's probably what you do. Mm-hmm. But there are potential downsides. Interestingly, the first thought was, well, that can't be very good for your microbiome because they rely on vegetable material to a large part. But when we've looked at the microbiome of after keto diets, there's some good guys that re-emerge with a keto diet. So it's a mixed bag. The only thing is that when you don't have as many plants in your diet, then there's slightly more strain on things like liver and kidney function. So someone who's taking keto for a long term, it's always a good idea to check that they're okay. And some of the more long-term concerns have been around kidney, because if there's a lot more of the animal-based material in food, then that can be more hard work for the kidney. So it's always worth checking that those functions are doing well. But I come back to the point, there is no one size fits all. We are omnivores. We're designed to eat almost anything.
My girlfriend, she's doing keto as well, and she noticed that her menstrual cycle became more regular.
Yes.
Which she was shocked by it. And she's really done a lot of A/B testing over the last couple of years. And whenever she's in a ketogenic diet, very low carb, very low sugar diet for 6 weeks, she was shocked that she could predict the day when her period would come. And outside of that, sometimes it's really varying.
Yeah. Well, there's a very good point about keto. One of the most effective things that keto does is it reduces insulin resistance, which is something that most of us suffer as we get older and larger, as we get through our life. Insulin is the hormone that packs sugar away into the tissues and into the liver. And thank God, because if we didn't have insulin, we would have diabetes. insulin resistance is growing, and that leads to diabetes increasingly. And so diabetes is, in most parts of the world now, is becoming another big health issue. And it's mainly because we have too many carbs, too much sugar in the diet, because whenever we eat sugar, particularly sugar, there's more work for the insulin to do, so it gets more likely to get run down and tired. When you're on a keto diet, it's been observed that you get more insulin sensitive. So in other words, the insulin works better. So you can reverse early stages of diabetes by switching to a keto, for example. Now, interestingly, many menstrual problems are linked to insulin resistance. And there's something called PCOS, which affects quite a lot of women now, in which the ovaries basically produce more hormone-producing cysts, polycystic ovary syndrome. And that is increasingly linked with insulin resistance. So it affects people who are more likely to be in the pre-diabetic phase, or putting on weight and that sort of thing. The insulin resistance itself switches the hormone balance, and the menstrual cycle is a wonderful choreography. I mean, when you think about it, all around the world it's a pretty predictable cycle. And it runs itself. But if there's something like insulin resistant getting in the way, then that can disrupt the hormone. So someone like your girlfriend might find that switching to a keto diet abolishes or reduces that disruptor.
Yeah, I was just reading some stats on that. It said that 80% of women with PCOS have some degree of insulin resistance, even those who aren't overweight. And my girlfriend does have PCOS, which she's talked about publicly before. So it's no surprise that that when she comes off, she takes sugar out of her diet, her menstrual cycle seems to fall back in line. And I think there's also links to insulin resistance, PCOS, and I guess ovulation and fertility.
Yes. It is so. I think, the modern woman, the modern man for that matter, has a whole string of burdens to carry because we have too much sugar. I mean, when you think about it, sugar only emerged as a common ingredient, 140 years ago, 150 years ago. Up till that time, only very rich people could afford it. Then we had the industrial sugar production, and a lot of slaves over in the Americas producing vast amounts of cane sugar. That is a modern phenomenon, and our bodies weren't designed to deal with the amount of sugar that we now feed it. And it does put a strain on the system, and insulin is one of the guys caught in the mix.
So if you're trying to have kids, which we are now, I guess you want to remove the...
If that's a factor, I would be looking at reducing your sugar intake at the very least, yeah. I mean, I spend a lot of time with women who are having difficulty conceiving. And, I think I have about 13 herb babies, in other words, babies who were born with women who were having challenges getting pregnant. And that was mainly, I think, because we were stabilizing the menstrual cycle and making the fertile phase a bit more productive.
And what do you say to those women? What do you prescribe, I guess?
I do. That's my business. I will be prescribing. So you see there's some bottles there. Yeah. These are the sort of things that we use in the practice. So I've got a couple here that the smell sense. So this is fennel, which we all think we know, but these are very strong extractions that only practitioners use. So these are practitioner-owned supplies. And when you smell it, you realize that they are strong.
Ooh. Wow.
So a teaspoon of that is a really powerful. Now, if you really want to realize the power of herbs, this is a remedy called Echinacea, and a lot of people know about Echinacea, and it's a major supplement. This is a root extraction from a variety of a species of Echinacea called angustifolia. And I'm just going to put a little bit in there. I'm going to test it myself before I give it to you, so I'm not poisoning you. So you just take a little
Should I put it on my skin or?
Put it on.
Or did you want me to shot that?
Just lick it.
Whoa. Wow.
So these are the sort of things, this is just a particularly striking example of the sort of things that we use in the practice. And so some of the women that come to me, for example, with fertility or menstrual problems, will go out with a mix of herbs drawn like this from about 100 or so different plants that I have on the shelves. And they are often, as I said earlier, remedies developed by women. And incidentally, North America is a prime site for some really powerful women's remedies. And interestingly, when you look at them, you find they contain plants equivalent of steroids. They're not steroids, but they seem to interact with our own hormone mechanisms. Some of them were particularly good at retiming the menstrual cycle, and the one or two that were particularly warned women should not take unless they wish to be pregnant. So effective were they? What's that doing to your tongue?
It's still right on the edge of my tongue. It's like it's more. So basically, for anyone that can't see what we're doing because you're listening on audio, he put a little drop of this solution, Echinacea, on my finger, and I licked it off my finger. And at first I was like, there was this sort of taste journey, which was interesting. It kind of tastes like Maggi seasoning, some kind of food seasoning. I'm now 60 seconds later, and I can still, it's like got more intense.
It's a bit like fireworks going on.
Yeah, it's like fireworks going off in my mouth. And all it was a little lick of it.
Now you see, what we use that for is for infections or problems of the mouth and the throat particularly.
What's it doing?
Well, you have to use a bit of unscientific language here. But remember I talked about the Marines, the guys who do all the battling for us. A lot of them hang out. Their barracks are in the throat. We've got tonsils, we've got adenoids, we've got the glands that run down our neck here that sometimes get swelled up, if we've got an infection in this area. Yeah, you have to take something to take the taste away.
I can't get the taste out of my mouth.
It sometimes gets in the way of talking as well.
Yeah. And
I was hesitating before giving it to you. Didn't want to stop you in your steps. But what's that tingling? As I said, a rather confusing story short. Those are constituents that almost seem to talk directly to those white blood cells and make them more active. Mm-hmm. And so Echinacea, in that form particularly, works primarily on the front line, shall we call it, of our immune system. These battlers that sit up there. And so often that's where you want to start the job. And you might have an infection somewhere else in the body. But if you can work up here with these guys, you can kick off all sorts of benefits. And as you've just discovered, it doesn't take long.
No. So who should be thinking about Echinacea?
Certainly if you've got an upper respiratory problem, and you do need to get that tingle if you want to get that particular effect. I mean, you can have Echinacea in other forms, pills and tablets and so on, and there are some which don't have that tingle factor. They've got other elements to it. But for the tingle factor, it's anything to do with an infection that has a link to what's going on up here. And that could be for lower down in the gut as well, because our gut begins up here as well. But it could be a sinus problem. It could be a middle ear problem. It could be a throat problem. It could be a gum problem. We've got all sorts of gum problems and all sorts of problems we have with mouth. We've got a microbiome up here as well. This can, with one or two other things. So some of the plants we use in this form contain resins. An example is frankincense. We've got some tablets there.
These ones?
Yeah, otherwise known as boswellia. And this just comes in the form of tablets. And they just look like any other tablets, except they're sort of greeny yellow colour, because that's just ground up resin. Now,
what's resin?
Resin, we know about that because it's the sort of thing you get out of pine trees, that very tacky stuff. All we need to do is remember the Bible story. There were 3 gifts that the baby Jesus got, didn't he, for his birthday from those wise men. One was gold, fair enough. The other 2 were resins, myrrh and frankincense. This is the frankincense. I use myrrh in a liquid form. and you almost like you're lining the mouth with this resin. It's when you put some myrrh on the mouth, you definitely feel the mucosa firing up, and it was most widely used medicine. And the reason why it was so valued in those days by the three wise men is because myrrh was there. First of all, they had to bring it out of Africa, which is where it comes from. Remember the Queen of Sheba who married Solomon, in the old Bible story. Queen of Sheba had the trade routes of East Africa sorted, so Solomon married wisely by marrying the Queen of Sheba, because she had the monopoly on myrrh, particularly, and on frankincense. And those, and Echinacea, maybe with a little licorice to help it work well, are amazing at reducing infections in this area.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.